Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I once was asked during a lecture if I spontaneously can mention an example for medical doctors who can personalize the good doctor and the vicious one. I did not have to think much. Two names emerged into my memory immediately. Dr. Adelaide Hautval, this is the way the name has to be pronounced, although there is a T in the middle, and the Austrian SS physician, Dr. Aribert Heim. The Holocaust period has provided to medical doctors a variety of moral challenges. During the Holocaust, medical doctors have behaved in a wide range of patterns of behavior towards patients, towards other physicians, Jews and non-Jews. Some were loyal to their Hippocratic oath, others rejected or neglected the Hippocratic oath. Some behaved in both ways according to the situation, enjoying both worlds. I have to confess, mentioning the two names of Dr. Adelaide Hautval and of Dr. Aribert Heim in one sentence is a difficult action for me. It seems to me that the names of both physicians should have never been mentioned in one sentence. Each of them represents a totally different pole, a different attitude towards humanity, and represent a world of values, a different world of values and moral principles. However, I could find no better example for the two extreme poles of humane medicine in comparison to non-humane medicine than the names of Adelaide Hautval and Aribert Heim. Dr. Hautval personalizes the finest, most noble character of a medical doctor who did not care to suffer or even being murdered or to pay any personal price in order not to contradict her Hippocratic oath and remain loyal to her humanistic principles until the end. Stört mich. Dr. Hautval was born in 1906. She was a French psychiatrist and later righteous among the nations. She was born to a very Protestant family. She studied medicine in Strasbourg and after her qualification worked in civil psychiatrist works. In April 1942, and here the interesting story starts, traveling to her mother's funeral, she was arrested trying to cross the demarcation lines separating the two zones of France without a permit. You know, France was divided into two areas. Awaiting her trial in Bourges prison, she vehemently protested the harsh treatment of Jewish prisoners who were incarcerated there in the same prison as she. The reply she received from the prison authorities was, in French of course, "As you wish to defend them, you will follow their fate. You like Jews, please go with them." So she was sent to Auschwitz. Sent to Auschwitz with a convoy of women prisoners, she arrived there in January 1943. She reportedly bore a sign stitched on her overcoat with the inscription in German, "A friend of a Jew," of the Jews. She never regretted it. At Auschwitz, she did a lot to help other women prisoners. For instance, she helped to hide a group of women afflicted with typhus and looked after them as best as she could. She was then asked by the SS garrison doctor Eduard Wirz, which was already mentioned, to participate in the sterilization experiments practiced on the bodies of Jewish women, especially young ones, in the infamous Block 10, which involved removing their ovaries either surgically or by means of radiation in order to produce sterility. Auval told Wirtz immediately that she was completely opposed to these experiments after she discovered their real nature. Wirtz was surprised, very much surprised, that she would object to a program whose ultimate purpose was the preservation of the supreme race. Wirtz asked her, "Can't you see that these people, meaning the Jews, are different from you?" And she answered him spontaneously that there were several other people different from her, starting with you. After her confrontation with Dr. Wirtz, she was advised to stay out of sight. She feared retribution, but was not punished. She was lucky. Then she was moved to nearby subcamp Birkenau and continued to practice medicine and heal the women prisoners as much as possible, considering the circumstances, no medications, no conditions, nothing, until August 1944, when she was transferred to Ravensbrück Women's Camp in Germany. She survived and was liberated in April 1945. In 1963, she appeared in London at the trial of Leon Juris versus Władysław Dering. Juris, in his book Exodus, has mentioned the experiments perpetrated by Dr. Dering, Polish prisoner doctor, and others on bodies of prisoners in Auschwitz without the use of anesthesia, and Dering had consequently used Juris for libel. A witness for the defense, Auval refuted Dering's claim that it was futile to disobey orders in Auschwitz, since in Dering's words, to refuse would be considered sabotage, adding that in Auschwitz all law, normal human and God's law, were finished. Auval, by contrast, maintained that SS orders to remove women's ovaries could be gotten around in such ways as to avoid punishment. Justice Lawton, in his summing up of the evidence to the jury, described Dr. Auval, I cite, as perhaps one of the most impressive and courageous women who has ever given evidence in the courts of this country, namely England. Years later, recalling the Holocaust, Auval stated, "This unspeakable horror could have been avoided if only this organized contempt of humanity, this megalomaniac insanity had been confronted by a civilized world, lucid, courageous, and determined to safeguard its primary values." On a visit to the State of Israel, 1966, to plant a tree in the garden of the righteous at Yad Vashem in Jerusalem, after being honored the previous year with the title of Righteous Among the Nations, Dr. Adelaide Auval stated, "The return of the people to Israel, to their own country, is an accomplishment concerning not only itself, but the world at large. Israel has always played a gestative, fermentative role, due to which it was hated or respected. Its mission in the world continues. May Israel remain faithful to it." The entire history of the Jewish people demonstrates the primacy of spiritual forces. Hence, its undertaking cannot be but successful. Auval, as mentioned, was deported to Auschwitz after being accused of being friend of the Jews. This detail in a pre-Auschwitz biography depicts, no doubt, a unique line of personality in Adelaide Hautval life. She was, from her very childhood, non-conformist, brave, persistent, and loyal to her own principles. She did never surrender to the prevailing winds of hatred towards Jews in pro-German France in the late 30s and the beginning of the 40s. Adelaide Auval remained decent, free from sentiments of hatred and prejudices against Jews, full of love to every human being. With such personal quality, she was deported to Auschwitz. On her courageous activities in Auschwitz, we can learn from many personal testimonies of Jewish women prisoners who survived. Most of them I've read at the Auschwitz Museum in Poland, in Auschwitz. With no exception, all testimonies draw a clear picture of a very unique person. Auschwitz, ladies and gentlemen, did not shape a new character of anybody, nor did it change the character lines of its prisoners. Sometimes, it's true, indeed, it sharpened them or directed them to some extremity or exaggerations. It is no wonder, therefore, that Adelaide Auval continued to behave in Auschwitz according to the same patterns, to the very same patterns which characterized her before arriving to the camp in 1941. According to the testimonies of her own autobiography, which was published after her death, she was selected to the sites of medical experiments in the main camp Stammlager Auschwitz, later to Birkenau and the women's camp Frauenlager, and where she helped dozens of Jewish women to recover diseases, to hide their pregnancy, or to conduct abortion if there was no other possibility. In cases this could save lives. By not reporting to the camp's authorities about the epidemics of women prisoners, Dr. Auval saved the lives of many women who otherwise would have been sent directly and immediately to the gas chambers. Auval is most probably the only prisoner in the whole history of Auschwitz, 5 years, who dared to say no to SS physician Joseph Mengele, who demanded her to join his staff. Being aware of what it meant, Auval nevertheless firmly refused. "Nein," she said, "I'm not going to join your staff." Twice. She refused more than once. Mengele could have easily killed her immediately or punished her severely. And this lecture would have been dedicated in such a case to other topics. She was not killed by Mengele and continued her humane activities constantly without fear. Analyzing Mengele's passive reaction, which was not typical for him, we can only assume that he, master of death and life in Auschwitz, was so surprised and shocked in front of such a brave behavior that he lost his normal pattern of cruelty and was like paralyzed. The case of Dr. Auval clearly shows that even in a hell called Auschwitz, individual mercy and humanity could be practiced and helpful without severely endangering the good-hearted person, as we already heard in your lecture. Adelaide Auval is no doubt a hero physician. She could without difficulty remain distant, cold, apathetic, or indifferent to the suffering of the Jewish women prisoners and ignore their agony. Nobody forced her to remain a humane doctor. However, She insisted on being a humane doctor, and as such, I'm convinced that her bravery should be learned and taught as a case study of a noble, decent, humane medicine during an extreme epoch and outstanding period. Let's go to the second pole. I need a small break. Dr. Aribert Heim was a doctor at the Mauthausen concentration camp during World War II and known to inmates as Dr. Death, Todesdoktor. Heim was known for performing often fatal operations and experiments, all in quotes, on patients without included injection of various solutions into Jewish prisoners' hearts to see which killed them the fastest, and mostly operating without anesthesia, and removing organs from healthy inmates and then leaving them slowly to die on the operating table. It is assumed that he did such crimes not less than 200 cases. Some other sources point to even double 400 cases. He enjoyed it. Until the 2009 discovery of his death a few years before in Cairo, Egypt, Heim remained the Simon Wiesenthal Center's most wanted National Socialist war criminal, and there was a reward of not less than €500,000 for information that would lead to his capture. Fortunately, he died in his bed in Cairo. He never was punished. Heim was born on June 28, 1914 in Austria and joined the local Nazi party in 1935. 3 years before Austria was annexed, the Anschluss, by Germany. In 1940, he volunteered to join Hitler's elite Waffen-SS. In October 1941, he was assigned to Mauthausen near Linz, Austria, as a camp doctor, Lagersarzt. While at a concentration camp, Mauthausen, Heim worked closely with SS pharmacist Erich Weisicki and carried out gruesome experiments linked to those of Joseph Mengele in Auschwitz. Heim was also a doctor in Buchenwald and Sachsenhausen concentration camps later, after he finished his mission in Mauthausen. In February 1942, he began serving in the 6th SS Mountain Division Nord in northern Finland, where he was an SS doctor in a Finnish hospital. He was captured by US soldiers on March 15, 1945, and sent to a camp for prisoners of war. Nevertheless, he was very much quickly released. Since I have only 2 or 3 minutes, I would like to read some words of conclusion. Aribert Heim personizes a big group of German SS or Austrian SS doctors who ruined the essence of the medical discipline, just ruined them, by using living prisoners, torturing, humiliating, operating them under cruel conditions, and in many cases, murdering them directly. Unfortunately, most of them, of those cruel, vicious doctors, were never punished for their crimes, and many even continued to work as medical doctors in Western Germany and Austria after the war. Some were arrested in the 60s, some in the 70s, and some never were discovered. The majority died peacefully in their beds. It seems that almost all of them never regretted their crimes and were convinced they acted correctly. The 2 medical doctors we discussed today represent the 2 extreme poles. Those doctors who became perpetrators, even murderers, and those who remained loyal to the moral principles of their profession. Amazingly, both Auschwitz and Heim did not change their life philosophy after the war. Auschwitz continued to live under the same principles until her death. I can only guess that even the tragic way of her own death by suicide is a brave step of a brave woman who decided to put an end to her life under her own decision. Heim, on the other hand, was from 1962 onwards preoccupied only with one question, constantly finding a place of refuge and escaping to prevent being arrested. He was even ready to convert to Muslim and became a Muslim, a new religion which enabled him to live in relative safety in Egypt until his death. In his few expressed thoughts, dated after the war, Heim clearly defends his criminal actions in Mauthausen, attacking his main victims, the Jews, using not even one sentiment of remorse or sorrow. As Mengele and other medical doctors, he surrounded himself with ex-Nazis and felt very good in their society. We will never know how a medical doctor became a murderer, what inner changes happened in him. But the victims who survived will never forget his cruel face and his crimes perpetrated in Mauthausen, Buchenwald, and Sachsenhausen. Thank you very much.